Oh no! This is what I was talking about a few days ago, how, for some reason, because the 2024 summer was filled with so little trade talk and very little drama compared to prior years. I know there was the entire offer sheet debacle with Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, and that same week we saw the Podkolzin trade and then the Patrick Laine trade, and there were a lot of things that happened in that 1 week. But everything else was really calm, especially compared to most other NHL off-seasons that we have seen. So, this year, it seems like the trade talk is coming about a month early from when we usually see it. Usually, we gotta wait until January. And then we start to see the trade deadline conversation build itself up, but now, oh boy, especially when you involve the Vancouver Canucks, there is a reason we are diving into these things earlier. Because today we're going over onto an article published on dailyhive.com by Noah Strang from yesterday that talks about a Halford and Brough radio hit with Czech TV's Rick Dhaliwal. Halford and Brough went out there and spoke with Dhaliwal earlier in yesterday's show. This was all in the Dolly with the Canucks Update, What We Learned segment. Articles are going to be linked in the description, firstly to the radio program itself if you want to listen to it. It's 44 minutes long, so it's good content. And you also have yourselves the Daily Hive article that talks about how the Canucks have called the Boston Bruins trying to get Nikita Zadorov back in a trade. Oh boy, let's go out there and read some of these comments here, shall we? The Vancouver Canucks seem to be interested in reacquiring a fan favorite from last season. GM Patrick Allvin has recently contacted the Bruins to discuss a trade for Zadorov, according to a new report. We already know they've thought about Nikita Zadorov. Some have said they've already called Boston about Zadorov, explained Czech's Rick Dhaliwal when talking about the Canucks on the Halford and Brough show. While the two sides made contact, it appears the discussion didn't progress much. I just heard it was a short conversation. It wasn't major, continued Dhaliwal. And here's the thing. That is a very small comment. It's a very tiny piece of information, but it does piggyback over what we had seen was said by Elliot Friedman literally a week ago. We made a video about this back when it was said, but essentially, we had Friedman talking about the idea of Nikita Zadorov getting traded back to Vancouver in his 32 Thoughts article, but he ended up saying that it's an idea that he is thinking about, that he doesn't know if anybody else is thinking about it, he doesn't even know if it will make sense, but he feels like Zadorov to Vancouver, back to Vancouver, might actually be something. And Dhaliwal then responded to this saying, hey, when Elliot Friedman says stuff, you have to read between the lines. And so, if we wanted to repeat a lot of what we had said in that video prior, it was, oh yeah, the Canucks need defense, they have guys that aren't really all too great playing defense right now, Myers, Juleson, Soucy, not that, any of these guys aren't particularly NHL defensemen. I mean, anybody who can play in the NHL is probably good enough to be there, but just comparatively, you think about other teams, you think about the top guys on the Canucks, the Hroneks, the Hugheses, and even what guys were last year, like Carson Soucy last year, amazing, chef's kiss, super calm, super poised, and he did a lot of great defensive work. This season, not the same. This team needs extra defensive help, and with Nikita Zadorov's name being tossed out there as a potential option, it really gets Canucks fans freaking out as to what those possibilities could look like, because not only was Nikita Zadorov a fan favorite from the 8 points he had scored in 13 games with the Canucks last year in the playoffs, plus the 4 goals, the 4 really nice goals, I might add, but also the fact that Nikita Zadorov is at 29 years old, he's signed on till 2031, so he'll be, 36 years old by then, and he's making $5 million a year. It's already been tossed out there as an idea by a few other people discussing this topic, but if the Vancouver Canucks were to acquire Zadorov, you can bet your behind they probably would want to see that with some salary retained. They would probably not prefer a $5 million AAV deal for a guy who might essentially be a third-pairing player. Now, to be fair, when we had those sort of ideas back in the summer, I think Nikita Zadorov's role was pretty clearly defined as a third-pairing guy in Vancouver. He'd play behind Hughes, Soucy, and then he'd be there. But now, things are a bit different. If you think about the Vancouver Canucks right now, if you brought Nikita Zadorov back, where does he play? Does he play behind Carson Soucy, who's been somewhat of a train wreck in his own end, or do you try to split it off 50-50, or do you maybe even give Zadorov a little bit of a higher share with that? Just for reference, if you go over to the Boston Bruins and their line combinations, guess what? Nikita Zadorov is a third-pairing guy. He's playing with Andrew Peeke, and Mason Lohrei is up there on the first pair with Charlie McAvoy. Now, the interesting thing is, Zadorov, I believe, has had some first-line minutes here in this season. I mean, if you head over to his game log, yeah, you'll see a bunch of 22-minute games in there. You'll see a few 19-minute games, so it kind of varies, I would say. It's pretty inconsistent. Zadorov even did reach 23 minutes in the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs back at the start of November, so he is a player who's capable of playing more than third-pairing minutes. The question is, though, is he suited for that? A lot of Boston fans have been complaining about Nikita Zadorov and about Elias Lindholm, how these guys have been overpaid, overhyped guys who don't really bring as much to the table than their dollar amounts would signify, which is why, if Vancouver were to get their paws on a Nikita Zadorov 2.0 trade, you could bet your behind they'd probably want to get some salary retained in there. You gotta remember, the Canucks initially did offer Nikita Zadorov a $5 million AAV deal, but they didn't want to go 7 years, they only wanted to go 6. Or at least, that's how I'm remembering it. If anybody has a correction, then please let me know in the comments section what the actual detail was. I could probably look it up, but like, I'm kind of lazy. And we did talk about this just a few months ago, so it's all there on the channel. But for Nikita Zadorov to potentially be a trade target for Vancouver once again, you know, Patrick Allvin's a creature of habit, right? He likes to make his trades early, he likes to target guys early, and he likes to be first to the punch when it comes to setting the market right. He picked that trade up from Jim Rutherford, who of course is also a part of the Canucks organization. And ultimately, if they wanted to dive into doing the same thing once more, Nikita Zadorov would be an interesting way to go about it. I mean, sure, I can understand a lot of Canucks fans' fear, saying, okay, yeah, would they want to commit that much time and that much money to a guy who is as good or maybe as bad as Zadorov is? Is that really something that would help the team out? But I think for me, I'm a very short-term thinking person when it comes to hockey. Like, I'm very long-term thinking about most other things, but like, in particular, winning and losing hockey games, I kind of think, yeah, would Zadorov be an upgrade on the team right now? I'd probably say so. I'd say giving more minutes to Zadorov and splitting that with Carson Soucy rather than having Tyler Myers and Noah Juulsen get a few extra minutes. I don't think that's that bad of an idea, as long as you're able to really get the best out of Nikita Zadorov, which we know he has a best. We know he has a ceiling. He's physical, he can move, he can score, he can do a lot of really good things. He's a brute force and he's a motivator. He's a guy with a flamboyant personality who really helps out whatever locker room it is that he's in. And this guy was an absolute monster for Vancouver in the playoffs, arguably the best defenseman on the team. It's just the rest of the sample that he had in Vancouver for the first 50-something games of the regular season were definitely not in the same stratosphere of talent. So, if you are trading for Zadorov, you have to really hope that you get that playoff version of him, and the tough part is you can't guarantee getting that sort of a player for a full 82-game season this year, or next year, or every other year until 2031. So, Nikita Zadorov trade. Apparently the Canucks have called and apparently they have asked about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this entire idea. If you're a Bruins fan, what you want in a trade for Zadorov? Everybody's been talking about Nils Höglander as the kind of guy that could get tossed in there, and to be honest, I think Höglander does play like a Boston style, so if that was a trade that went down like tomorrow, for example, oh, it's Zadorov for Höglander, whoa, it's 1-for-1, like, maybe there are a few other assets that need to be added on there, but I think stylistically it would make sense. Just a hunch. But obviously, in my mind, I'm thinking if you could trade Höglander for Zadorov, I wonder what else you could trade Höglander for. Like, what other defensemen are there on the market? Maybe somebody who's right-handed, maybe somebody who's a little bit more consistent, maybe somebody who's a little bit less of a mixed bag in terms of what you get, and somebody who has a better reputation. Who really knows? There are a lot of options here throughout the National Hockey League for defensemen to trade for. But Big Z? No, not Big Z. That's Zdeno Chara. Big Nikita Zadorov in Boston? Hey, he seems to be one of them. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you're a Canucks fan or a Bruins fan. What are your opinions on this entire trade idea? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.